Shalom and welcome. You're listening to a WAS community radio show. My name is Esther. I have invited as a guest of honour a local conservative councillor and a rabbi of the Higher Council and Higher Broughton Synagogue, Rabbi Arnold Saunders. Good morning, Rabbi Saunders.
Good morning, Esther.
Thank you for joining me and for allowing my listeners to listen to our programme today. My first question to you today is, what is your role as a rabbi in the local Orthodox synagogue?
Well, I've actually been a rabbi in this synagogue for approximately 26 years. It is a part-time position, mainly centres over the Jewish Sabbath, which is Friday night and Saturday, Sunday, and sort of morning and evening prayers as well. I'll conduct weddings. We don't have that many in our synagogue because they're mainly sort of elderly members in our particular synagogue, funerals and so on. So it's quite a varied job. There's a lot of pastoral work, visiting the sick and so on, people in hospital. But as I said, it is part-time, which does allow me to do other things, including the fact, as you've just mentioned, a councillor. I've been recently elected as a councillor to the Salford City Council.
Well, I would like to say congratulations for you to being elected as a councillor. So just tell me, what's your role as being a councillor then?
Well, thank you very much, Esther. Yes, I was elected in a by-election on the 2nd of March. Sadly, my predecessor, the late Councillor Harry Davis, passed away. He'd become ill and he sadly died. He was a Labour councillor, so there had to be a by-election. That's a special election just for the one ward of Kersal. And I stood as a Conservative and I beat the Labour candidate who stood. So I've been approximately 5 weeks now. In fact, I think exactly 5 weeks to the day I've been a councillor. And I represent the people of the Kersal ward in Salford. There are 3 councillors for each ward. There is, of course, a city mayor who has executive authority, and there are 50 Labour councillors throughout Salford, so I'm one of only 9 Conservative councillors. But my role, apart from doing general council work and attending meetings, but really is to help people with their problems, particularly if they've got any issues with the local council. They can come and see me or ring me or email me and so on, as they, of course, do to the other councillors too.
How do you manage to combine both your councillor role and your rabbi role together?
Right, well, it's difficult. I do various things, but you know, there's an old saying, if you want a job doing, give it to a busy man or woman. Sometimes people who are very busy are able to juggle things in a way that they can get things done, where sometimes people who are not used to being very, very busy would find it hard. So it does mean that I have to burn the candle at both ends, and it certainly keeps me out of mischief. But yeah, I do cope. I get help from people who are very good, and hopefully I manage.
Okay, and I want to make it clear to my listeners, what's the difference between being a councillor and an MP?
Right, an MP is one of currently 650 members of the House of Commons, which is the lower chamber of Parliament. The upper chamber is the House of Lords. They represent constituencies. So because there's only 650, the constituencies are quite large. I think there's an average of 70-something thousand voters in each constituency. And they sit in the House of Commons, so they make laws, which of course councillors don't, and they hold the government to account, and they represent their constituents. A councillor has a seat on the local council. There are 20 wards in Salford. Each ward has approximately 8,000 voters. So, for example, in Salford, out of the whole of Salford, there are 2 parliamentary constituencies, but 2 of the wards, one of which is my ward, Kersal and Broughton, are actually part of the Manchester constituency of Blakely and Broughton. So quite often MPs have been councillors before they've become MPs. In fact, I got a lovely letter from the Prime Minister, Theresa May, a few days after I got elected, congratulating me, of course, because I'm a Conservative councillor, and she put in the letter that she too was a councillor before she became a Member of Parliament.
So is that Rabbi Arnold Saunders' dream one day to become an MP and then to become the Prime Minister, or not?
Well, we'll take one thing at a time. I think the Prime Minister, I don't think anybody can seriously say they want to become Prime Minister, because there's only one person that can ever be Prime Minister at any one time. There's no vacancy at the moment, and probably won't be for several years. Certainly not as a Conservative Prime Minister. So I don't think anybody would tell you, even if they did harbour ambitions, I don't think anybody would admit to having ambitions to be Prime Minister. But I think at my age now, I'm getting on for 60, I think to have ambitions to become Prime Minister when I'm not even an MP would be a bit difficult. But as far as being an MP is concerned, look, the way I put it a bit diplomatically is, if the members of my party felt that they wanted to ask me to put my name forward for Parliament, and there are one or two who do feel that way, then I would give it serious consideration, yes. So, in short, an MP, possibly, but Prime Minister, I couldn't even begin to think of that. I will just say one thing, Esther, that there is something called the Boundary Commission, who look at, every few years, they look at the boundaries for the constituencies, and there is a major review going on at the moment, and a lot of constituencies will actually be changed. For example, Bury South, which is not far from here, where Ivan Lewis is the MP, that's, according to the plans at the moment, not being finalised, that constituency will completely disappear and will become part of other constituencies. And also they're actually trying to reduce the number of MPs from 650 to 600. So it's not going to be easy becoming an MP. And in addition, because of Brexit, in a couple of years' time, all the MEPs will lose their jobs. And like Afzal Khan, who I'm sure is a friend of this station, Afzal Khan has just now become the candidate for Manchester Gorton, and I'm sure he will not be the only MEP that will be looking to actually find a seat in the Westminster Parliament, because of course in just under 2 years' time they will no longer be MEPs in Brussels.
That's very interesting. Thank you for that. Just a few more questions to ask you today. So what is your best position? What is your best ideal goal about being a rabbi? What has been the best job for you being a rabbi?
I think the best job being a rabbi is very similar to, if you would ask me what's the best part of being a counsellor, it's helping people. As a rabbi, yes, I'll take the service, I'll preach, and that can be very enjoyable. But in many ways, the most rewarding part is when you help somebody, you give comfort to perhaps the bereaved, the sick, and they thank you. Not that I look for thanks, but they say, you've really helped me, thank you very much. So I think helping people, and there's a message in that for all of us, because you don't have to be a rabbi or a counsellor or an imam or a vicar or an MP to help people. Anybody can help somebody, whether it's your next door neighbour or volunteer for a group or community group, in so many different ways. And I'm sure here in the radio station that you I'm sure help people in different ways as well on air.
What is the hardest job being a rabbi?
Well, sometimes if you're trying to help people with problems which are very difficult to solve, that can be very hard. Bereavement, funerals can be very difficult. I always say you can't generalise with things like funerals, because if you do a funeral of somebody who is 100 and has got their great-grandchildren present at the funeral, and they've had a wonderful life, yes, of course it's sad, and it's always sad to lose your mother or father and so on, doesn't matter what age they are, but you can't compare the sadness to a funeral of a young person who's perhaps died suddenly or in an accident or something, and the family are absolutely devastated, perhaps leaves a young widow and orphans and so on, and that can be or sometimes I've even dealt with suicides and so on, that can be very, very difficult. When you deal with family breakup situations, which I do from time to time, divorce issues, that can be heartbreaking actually. Very often people don't realise that actually, but the people involved, in counselling, in Judaism, like Islam, I think we affect a religious divorce. That can be quite harrowing, and sometimes you have to say to somebody, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you, or so on. That can be difficult. It can be very, very difficult as a rabbi, again, an imam, a vicar. Sometimes it falls to you to break some sad news to people. So I've had to tell people, sadly, your mum's passed away, your dad's died, or your husband. That's very, very difficult, and there's no easy way of doing that. Funnily enough, when I was, a few years ago, the Jewish chaplain to the forces, when, by the way, I worked extremely closely with the imam to the forces, so I've been involved in lots of interfaith work, particularly in the army. We actually had training on that sort of thing. Very, very difficult.
I can imagine so, because I saw you, Rabbi Saunders, attending and actually carrying out services of a funeral for our great friend. May his soul rest in peace. My final question today for you is, so as we know, it's a Jewish festival for the Jewish people, so I just want my listeners who are and who aren't Jewish to know about the great festival that's coming up on Tuesday the 11th of April, Passover. I know I've got a few jobs in my house to do, one of them is getting my nails done, but can you explain to my listeners what Passover is all about?
I can, although let me start off by saying I've also got lots and lots of things to do before Passover, but I can categorically say that getting my nails done is not one of them. I cut my nails, and that's about it. Right, Passover is the day, it's actually 8 days, that the Jewish people celebrate the Exodus from Egypt, and that's in the Torah, the Bible, the Old Testament. It's actually in the book of Exodus, when following the slavery in Egypt, God visited the 10 plagues upon the Egyptians, and he split the Red Sea, and the children of Israel walked to freedom, and so we celebrate it. We celebrate it by not eating bread and by eating special food called matzah. This is because when the children of Israel finally did leave, although they were there for many years, as often happens with these things, when the end comes, it comes very quickly, and they had to run out, and there was no time for the dough to rise, and they had this sort of what we call unleavened bread, which is matzah. So we all eat matzah, which, by the way, anybody can buy. It's relatively cheap. You can go to the local supermarket. I won't advertise names of supermarkets, but all the big local supermarkets will sell, particularly at this time of the year, matzah. You can buy them for about £1 a packet, and it's very healthy food, actually. I highly recommend it. And then we also have on the first 2 nights what we call a Seder service, where we sort of relive the story of going out of Egypt. Generally speaking, people have it in their own homes. There are some synagogues that have communal Seder services, if you like, but generally this is a home-based thing. And I know, again, in Islam you have festivals where you have festivities and meals at the home, I think after Ramadan and so on. Christians, of course, have Christmas, so this, if you like, is our Christmas, our Eid, I think you would call it. So yeah, that's Passover, and it begins, as you say, on Tuesday the 11th, but because all Jewish days actually commence the evening before at nightfall, which I think is the same as Islam, if I'm not mistaken, so of course it starts on Monday evening, and that's the first Seder night.
Thank you very much. If anybody would like to contact you, Rabbi Saunders, how can they get hold of you? Well,
the best way of contacting me is via my email, and I'll give you my new email as a councillor. It's councillor.saunders@salford.gov.uk. That's all lowercase, councillor Saunders. Saunders, by the way, spelled Saunders, at salford.gov.uk. If somebody wants to contact me, for example, by phone, if you go on the Salford city website, www.salford.gov.uk, you will find my contact details on that. I don't particularly want to give my mobile number out on the over air, but if somebody really wants to, it is actually on the Salford City Council website.
Thank you, Rabbi Saunders, for coming to speak on my show today. I would like to wish you and your family a very special happy Passover.
Thank you, and to you, Esther.
Thank you.
And to all your listeners, happy Passover or whatever you're celebrating, or happy Easter to Christians. I'm not sure if Muslims have got a festival coming up, but wish you a good time anyway, and a peaceful time for all of us.
Thank you very much. Shalom and have a good day.
Thank you.